So Instagram has this feature in stories where you can ask questions. I'm answering as many of your questions in the shortest amount of time as possible. Let's go.
Super fast Instagram Q&A.
If you were teaching music theory to aliens, where would you start? I would explain to them that humans are really good at perceiving the relationships between regular events in time. We experience these events through our sense of hearing, but also through our body. Slower events in time are experienced as rhythm, but faster events in time are experienced as pitch and harmony. I would explain to these aliens that music is basically just wiggly air or wiggly atmosphere, and we experience how many times per second the air wiggles as pitch. We're then really good at measuring the different air wiggles. For example, if some atmosphere wiggles at 300 times per second and some atmosphere wiggles at 200 times per second, we experience that 3-to-2 relationship as an interval, as a perfect fifth. We experience other air wiggling events as different intervals, like 5-to-4 as a major third or 15-to-8 as a major seventh. We humans have developed a very complex hierarchy of these air wigglings. We humans are really good at building these fantastic relationships between intervals through melody and harmony. So basically what music is the ritualistic application of mathematical ratios. If mathematics is a constant throughout the universe, then so too is at least the concept of human music. True temperament bass frets. I think they're pretty cool. They correct for the natural inharmonicities in bass and guitar strings. What that means is that when you play chords, especially in the upper register, they're gonna sound a lot more in tune than on regular frets. But mainly, they just kind of look cool. And that's what music is all about, right? Hey Adam, how's it going? It's going pretty well. Why do I love you? At least somebody does. Recommend a fictional book. Try Galapagos by Kurt Vonnegut. It's not Cat's Cradle, it's not Slaughterhouse-Five, but it is classic Kurt Vonnegut. Who are your favorite bass players? I'm most influenced by Tim LaFave and Evan Marion in my own bass playing right now, but my favorite bass player and teacher is probably Victor Wooten. I really like how he teaches and how he approaches music. What's your opinion on Dark Glass Electronics? I really like how they approach bass overdrive and bass pedals in general. Will you ever make a video on how to listen to jazz? Eventually. When did you start playing bass? When I was 13, I was learning how to play guitar and a new band was starting up and they needed a bass player, so I played bass. It's a tale as old as time.
Tale as old as time.
Why do people hate on new rock music artists like Greta Van Fleet? Because change is scary and people are cowards. Be my guru? Probably not. Do you do jazz? Yes, I do, and Rob Scallon owes me royalties. DEFGECD. I don't get it. How much time should I spend on music per day? Enough so you feel fulfilled, but not too much so that you get burnt out. How many tetrachords do you chug in a day? 3 Lydian tetrachords followed by a Phrygian tetrachord digestif. Every time you read a new question on your channel, you play the lick in a dissonant sound. What's the theory behind it? I think it's funny. What's your favorite jazz album and why? There's so many to choose from. Right now I'm really digging on Bill Evans' You Must Believe in Spring. How can one develop a natural feeling of applying quintuplets in, for instance, when soloing? The way I first practiced it is kind of using a bastardization of South Indian solfege syllables, dakka dakka, to approximate the sound of quintuplets, like this with a metronome. Dakka 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 da. Trying to start teaching bass and theory lessons online, I don't know where to start. So first figure out if you want to get private students or you want to develop online content. Whatever you choose though, figure out exactly what you bring to the table. The marketplace is already fairly saturated with people looking to teach, and so you need to figure out what makes you special. Why bass? Because it sounds cool. Best audition songs? If you're a bass player, anything from the Motown catalog. Wine or cheese? Both please. Why Kandinsky? I like Kandinsky's art because he's a fellow synesthete and he thought a lot about the relationship between visual art and music. Favorite decade for pop music? Really any decade that Stevie Wonder is working. How do I find love? I don't know, but let me know when you find it. Hey Adam, I'm a bass player and I've gotten into jazz lately. Can you suggest me what to study first? First, learn how to walk bass lines. I suggest Building Walking Bass Lines by Ed Friedland, and also this video. It teaches you how to walk a bass line in 60 seconds. The keys to good bass lines: make sure that your bass line is serving the song. And if you're not sure if your bass line is serving the song or not, chances are it probably isn't. Why is your content so good? Because I spend a lot of time on it, I pay close attention to detail, and I've been doing it for a long time. Favorite instrument besides bass? The piano, because it's kind of like the orchestra, but in black and white. Can I be on your Q&A again? Sure. Have you tried playing the violin before? Yes, poorly. Should I give up on music knowing I'm never gonna achieve anything with it? My opinion is what you should always do with anything that you love, like music, is find yourself in a position where you can keep doing it for as long as you possibly can. Achievement, fame, goals, accolades, none of that really ends up mattering in the end. The only thing for me that matters is the ability to keep doing the thing that I love. Did you analyze some Latino American music? Yes, I'm definitely gonna do that in the future. What are your thoughts on no wave music? It's funny. About to go to Boston Conservatory as a composition major. Any advice? Thanks. Take the next couple years figuring out what it is you like to do as a composer. You're gonna get a lot of techniques thrown at you and you're gonna learn a lot, and not all of it is gonna resonate with you. That's okay. Try and figure out what works for you. How long have you known Josh Bailey? 3 years. Can you choose between Art Tatum and Oscar Peterson? Personally, I like Oscar Peterson more, but man, if you've never heard Tiger Rag by Art Tatum, you should check that out. Piano shred. What are the pedals on your pedal board? These. Tips for teaching music? If you're not passionate about it, how would you expect your student to be? Why didn't you get a bass solo in the Dread Machine? Stevie T was being a total dick and didn't let me. Just kidding, he's a lovely human being. What are your tips for up-and-coming musicians? If you want to have music as a career, you kind of have to treat it as a job. Sometimes you're going to do things that you just don't want to do, like any other job. You have to treat your passion with a degree of dispassionate calculation. Could you talk about all of your gear for bass and music production? I probably could, yeah. Is taking a semester off before college a good idea? I don't know, I didn't do that, but it might work for some people. Thoughts on Les Claypool? He sucks. Do augmented chords have function? How can I use them if they don't occur naturally? Typically, you'll find an augmented triad on the 5th degree functioning as a dominant. So in the key of C, you'd have a G augmented chord. That D sharp, the augmented 5th of the G chord, would resolve up a half step to the E of the tonic C chord. How did you get from where you began bass to where you are now? 17 years of practice. Could one potentially use all 12 notes simultaneously, functionally? Yeah, you can use all 12 notes at the same time, probably not functionally. In Slonimsky's Thesaurus of Scales and Melodic Patterns, he gives a couple of ways that you can organize all 12 notes. You got things like the chord of the minor 23rd, the pyramid chord, the mother chord, the grandmother chord. I think Rick Beato did a video on one of these things. I'm not sure how practical they are, but you can use them if you want. Why aren't there more famous Barry players? I don't know, I really like the sound of a Barry sax. Gary Smulyan's a great Barry player. Ronnie Kuber's a great Barry player. Harry Carney played in Duke Ellington's orchestra for like 40 years. And then there's, of course, you know, Leo P. Is jazz dead? No, it just smells funny. Bass to treble ratio. All bass all the time. Bass. Is there an upper limit to how many notes can be in a chord until it sounds bad? Nah. I'm music ed going into a 4-year university, but I feel like I really want to focus on jazz. Advice? Honestly, what you get your undergraduate degree in doesn't matter a whole lot, because if you're in music ed, you're probably going to go on and get a graduate degree in music ed anyway. So just major in whatever you want. Is going to school for music worth it? Like anything in life, it's only going to be worth it if you put in the work. How many strings do you recommend for a bass? 3. Hey Adam, how often do you get the opportunity to play a gig? Right now I'm only playing out maybe once a week, but that's down pretty significantly from the same time last year where I was playing about 3 or 4 times per week. Are you ever gonna visit Australia? Hopefully someday. What's the worst gig you've done so far? Oh God. I'll have to get back to you on that one. How do you prevent tinnitus in your ears from playing too much? Earplugs. Very useful. Why do we play music? A serious question. Like all art, it's a means of understanding ourselves and the world around us. Is gent the new dad rock? That's a good way of putting it. Yes, it definitely is. What do you think about disco? I love it. There's so much to learn from it. I think that disco is actually a really unfairly maligned genre, especially considering that a lot of pop music from the past 10 years essentially is electronic disco. There's some really awesome bass lines, and believe it or not, the music of ABBA. Check out some of their bass lines. They're really legitimately quite cool. Apartment sessions. How many takes does it usually take before you guys have the good one? The sessions are 4 hours long. Most of the time is actually spent setting up and getting everybody into position. So by the end of it, we only usually have about a half an hour to 45 minutes of actually doing takes. So usually 3 or 4 takes. When are you going to choose one of my questions for a Q&A? Right now, I'm in my first quarter at MI. Suggestions for a more efficient practice routine? If you have the time, learn songs, learn repertoire. It's the most efficient way of developing your craft. How did you learn to use Sibelius? In high school, I downloaded a cracked copy of Sibelius 5 and taught myself how to compose that way. What's your favorite album, bass tone-wise? Anything that Rage Against the Machine ever did. I want to score film. Should I get a comp bachelor? Do I need to move to New York or LA? Most of the people that I know who are doing film scoring ended up moving to LA, so probably. How do you fight the apathy of practice when there are so many aspects of every instrument to cover? Get a gig. The terror of looking like a fool on stage will motivate you past any apathy that you feel towards practicing. If you lost the use of your left hand, what instrument would you play? That's a good question. Probably key bass, because I could still use my right hand to play bass lines. Animals as leaders, they're cool. Describe harmony of the spheres in emojis. Earth, sun, moon, protractor, music. Favorite Kesha album? Probably Animal. Tips on help teach explain basic music theory? Relate everything back to the major scale. It's going to make everything a lot easier to explain as you go. What's bass? This is a bass. Should jazz musicians overthrow a government? Sure, so long as we install Wayne Shorter as the emperor of jazz. That would be pretty funny. Could you recommend me an octave pedal? Boss OC2. Advice on composing. Don't write bad music. With which instrument can you express more of your feelings while playing it? Definitely bass guitar, because I have more technical mastery of the instrument and I express more nuance of emotion through it. One of the most frustrating things for me when I'm playing guitar or piano is that I'll get an idea, but I don't have the technical ability to execute the idea on the instrument. It's really, really quite frustrating. What's your thought with audiophiles? You can waste your money on a $700 cable if you want, but I'm not going to. What's the musician scene going to be like for musicians in a few years, as in gig and job wise? So the big growth market, believe it or not, is going to be the wedding industry for musicians, because even if people aren't getting married in greater numbers, the amount of money that they're spending on their weddings is growing exponentially. So for working musicians, there's always going to be that. Upgrade bass or amp first. If you're in a band, amp first. If you're not in a band yet, bass. Can you analyze Rob Scallon's jazz? It sounds basically like the whole downtown New York thing, like the John Zorn Naked City thing. It's pretty cool. Why is it bad to have 2 bassists date for 6 months? If you have ever dated a bassist, I'm so sorry. Is music a science? Marry me? I'm sure you can do better. What in your opinion makes the bass so enjoyable to play? It sounds awesome. How do you cope with the mild fame? Pretty terribly, actually. Will this be in another video? Yep. Please make a gent version of Giant Steps. That would be pretty amazing. Someday. Have you ever played a ukulele? I'm playing ukulele in the background music for most of my videos. It's Ether off of Sungazer's debut EP. It's a fun instrument. Is switching from engineering to music degree the wrong decision? What I want to do versus a definite job? Personally, I've never had a backup plan because 20 years from now, I don't want to look back on my life wondering what might have been. So do what you want, do what you love, don't make any decisions out of fear. Have you ever tried flat wound or tape wound strings? Occasionally, I will try flat wound strings on my bass. They sound really nice and fat and full because they have a really solid fundamental, but unfortunately, they're not as versatile as round wound strings. I find music theory interesting, but I just want to write music. Can I still be in the club? Sure, music theory is just the analysis of music. Write whatever music you'd like and then worry about the analysis later. How to jazz ballad? Ask Dexter Gordon. He jazz ballads really well. Do you like modular synths? Would you ever get one? I am terrified by modular synths because I know I would become obsessed. I don't know how Andrew Wong does it because holy crap, they are quite expensive. My music teacher disses you. Who should I listen to? You or him? Lol. Me. But only if I'm right. Why buy a bass guitar if I have an octave pedal and a guitar? Why buy a guitar if I have an octave pedal and a bass? What's your political ideology? Authoritarian jazzist. How do you deal/cope with feeling inferior to other musicians? I definitely have felt that way before in the past, and I definitely still feel that way now to some degree or another. It's only natural to look towards what other people are doing and feel some degree of inferiority if you can't do what they're doing. I think the healthy way of working around that is focusing in on yourself and what you do, and viewing what other people can do with a degree of admiration and inspiration rather than jealousy. Because eventually other people will look at you with those same feelings, and you want to turn that into a positive thing rather than a negative thing. Would the earth implode if you served as the officiant at June Lee and Jacob Collier's wedding? I'd probably honestly just want to be the videographer and make some snarky vlog about it. Favorite Miles album? Probably a tribute to Jack Johnson. No, not that Jack Johnson. Tips about counting in odd times: do it slowly at first and count everything out loud. You got games on your phone? So here's a fun tip. The original Roller Coaster Tycoon has a really, really good port for iOS, and yes, I play a lot of Roller Coaster Tycoon. Best track off of Bitches Brew. Spanish Key. Who's your favorite musician in Duke Ellington's orchestra? I know I mentioned Harry Carney earlier, but I gotta go with my boy, Johnny Hodges. Why jazz and not deathcore? They really are the same thing, aren't they? If the plural of foot is feet, why isn't the plural of shoes sheet? Sheet. How old were you when you took up music? I was about 8 or 9 years old when my parents first put me into piano lessons. How do you think we can use music as a social change agent on this era? Greetings from Chile. I might be a little bit of a pessimist, but I honestly don't think that music itself has ever been a catalyst for social change. Instead, I think that music is a reflection of social changes that are happening at the time. Certain songs can be emblematic of those social changes, which gives the impression that those songs are actually the things that are bringing about the social change. Opinion on being hired as a musician on a cruise ship. I think it's a great first working musician sort of gig to get, especially if you're straight out of college, because it's a good application of your skills and it's a means of improving your craft as a musician. But for me, I never did one of those gigs because I really wanted to be in a location and really soak up the scene. Part of the trade-off of being a cruise ship musician for any length of time is you don't really develop a network and a scene in one city. Is Ray Brown the best jazz upright bass player? He's certainly up there. Thoughts on Charles Mingus? I love his bass playing, but I love his composition even more. Awesome musician. How well can you jazz? Pretty decently. How do you drink your perfect coffee? Black. What are your thoughts on Leonard Bernstein? He's amazing. Lenin or Stalin? I prefer Lenin. Trotsky. What's your opinion on vaporwave and lo-fi hip-hop/jazz? It's smooth jazz, but for millennials. What's the thing that you hate most on doing music? Schlepping gear. Any favorite bass solo? Probably Eddie Gomez's solo on You Must Believe in Spring, that Bill Evans album that I mentioned earlier. Do you tell the difference between jazz played in New York, USA and other parts of the world? Yeah, definitely. That's part of the main reason why I'm still living in New York, is because I really like the way that musicians here play jazz. From the path of pop music to now, do you think we could predict the next big thing? So when Katy Perry came out with that song Chained to the Rhythm, I thought that future funk would be the next big thing in pop music. I was very wrong. What do you do in your free time besides music? Believe it or not, I watch a lot of competitive Age of Empires 2 on Twitch. Yeah, it's weird. How would an analysis with a Western approach to theory view a piece in a Hindustani raga? That really wouldn't make a lot of sense because Western music theory is really concerned with harmonic motion and harmonic development. Instead, Hindustani music is a lot more about melodic development. The intricacies of Hindustani rags are a lot more developed and a lot more specific than anything in Western scalar theory. So it's kind of an apples and oranges thing. It really wouldn't make any sense. What does Ben Levin smell like? Charcoal and strawberries. Favorite tuning system besides 12-tone equal temperament? 22-tone equal temperament sounds cool. One bass line that took you a long time to master but made you a better musician in the long run? The bass line to I Want You Back I learned very early on. It was very difficult for me as a beginner, but it really improved my bass playing. Are you a quintuplet guy or a septuplet guy? Definitely quintuplet. Can we get an Adam Neely, Jordan Peterson collab? Thoughts on Eric Whitacre's music and way of writing and arranging? I know Eric Whitacre's music is kind of looked down upon in the choral community, but I think it sounds pretty cool. From my understanding, his music is very much based upon diatonic clusters, clustering a lot of notes very close to one another. Do you ever see any female drummers at gigs? Not that often, but when it does happen, it's a welcome surprise to have more female representation. Ever gig while stoned? Yes. Unfortunately, I do not recommend it. How tall are you? 6 feet. If you could meet 12-year-old you for a moment, what would you tell yourself? Stop being such a dick. What types of gigs gives you the most satisfaction? The types of gigs where I play great music with great people. Collab with Bill Wirtz, that would be amazing. Are you aware of your presence on /mu? Yes, apparently I'm a total hack. How'd you get started with YouTube? I uploaded a video of me tapping the maple leaf rag on a 7-string bass about 12 years ago. And yeah, I've just kept uploading videos ever since. Do you still practice the crazy bass stuff you used to do, like the maple leaf rag but on a 7-string bass? I stopped doing that because I realized that people were just impressed by it, but I didn't really get anything musically from it, so I moved on. Enough music nerd stuff. Favorite beer? I really like session beers like the All Day IPA. I like anything that's low alcohol content but high in taste. Are micro Q&As gonna be your new thing? I guess.
Super fast instant Q&A.